The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber stretched impossibly high, their translucent surfaces refracting starlight in patterns that would hypnotize lesser beings. Today, those same patterns seemed to tremble with anxiety as the emergency session descended into barely controlled chaos. "The anomaly has consumed the outer reaches of the Helios 7 colony," announced High Counselor Vale, their crystalline form pulsing with distress frequencies. The massive holographic display at the chamber center showed a real-time feed of what could only be described as reality itself being eaten alive. The darkness wasn't just absorbing light, it was devouring the very fabric of space-time. The axioms, beings of pure logic and crystalline perfection, had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through their mastery of science and unwavering rationality. Now, their most advanced containment fields were shattering like glass against the anomaly's inexorable advance. In the upper tiers of the chamber, dozens of species from across the galaxy watched in mounting horror. Some were silicon-based, others purely energy, and a few defied traditional classification entirely. Among them sat Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's junior representative, her simple navy blue suit standing out among the exotic biological and technological displays of other species. While other representatives argued increasingly desperate proposals, Sarah sat quietly, her fingers dancing across her primitive tablet computer. The device was practically an antique by galactic standards, its casing scratched and worn from actual physical use, a concept that made most advanced species uncomfortable. The anomaly's expansion has increased by 47.3% in the last solar rotation, announced third speaker Helix, their crystalline form vibrating with precision. Our most advanced predictive models indicate total galactic contamination within 3 standard years. "Preposterous," shouted Representative Kex of the Silicon Confederation, their volcanic body temperature spiking. "The axioms assured us their quantum barriers would contain any cosmic-level threat." High Counselor Vale's form dimmed slightly, the closest their species came to showing shame. "The anomaly defies our understanding. It appears to operate on principles that contradict established universal constants." The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Energy beings flickered with agitation. Silicon life forms began to melt their seats, and the chamber's environmental systems struggled to compensate for the emotional discharge of a dozen different species' anxiety responses. Sarah continued working on her tablet, a small smile playing at her lips as she reviewed the data streaming in from Earth's secret monitoring stations. The humans had been studying similar phenomena for decades, ever since they'd first detected traces of what their scientists had nicknamed cosmic cancer. The difference was, humans hadn't approached it with the assumption that it needed to be contained. Finally, Sarah stood. The simple act of her metal chair scraping against the ornate floor somehow cut through the chaos. Heads turned, appendages pointed, and sensory organs of all descriptions focused on this audacious representative of a primitive species. "Earth requests permission to present an alternative solution," Sarah said, her voice calm but carrying an undertone of barely contained excitement. The chamber fell silent not in respect, but in collective disbelief at her audacity. The axioms, their crystalline forms perfectly still, seemed to be processing the very concept that a species barely capable of interstellar travel would dare to speak up in this crisis. High Counselor Vale's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Representative Chen, while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, this crisis involves physics beyond your species' comprehension. Your civilization has only achieved limited faster-than-light travel within the last century." Sarah's smile didn't waver. "With respect, High Counselor, sometimes comprehension isn't about technological advancement. Sometimes it's about perspective." She manipulated her tablet, and a new set of data streams appeared in the chamber's holographic display. These are readings from similar anomalies that have appeared in Earth's solar system over the past 50 years. The chamber erupted again, this time in shock. The axioms' forms began vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter their own crystalline structure. "Impossible," Third speaker Helix declared, "Our monitoring systems would have detected." "Your monitoring systems," Sarah interrupted, earning more gasps of shock at the breach of protocol. "We're looking for what you expected to find. Humans, we tend to look for what doesn't make sense. It's one of our specialties." She walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. "Earth doesn't propose to contain the anomaly," she continued, bringing up more data with casual flicks of her fingers. "We propose to communicate with it." The chamber's environmental systems finally overloaded as dozens of species tried to express their shock, disbelief, and outrage simultaneously. In the resulting chaos, Sarah stood calmly in the center, watching the feed from Helios 7, with the kind of expression usually reserved for solving a particularly interesting puzzle. The humans were about to show the galaxy why sometimes the most advanced solution wasn't the right one. Sometimes you needed something a bit more primitive. The council chamber's perfect acoustics carried every incredulous murmur as Dr. Sarah Chen pulled a steel thermos and a small container of salt from her briefcase. The axiom's crystalline forms vibrated with frequencies, suggesting they were calculating the probability that humanity's representative had lost her mind. "Dr. Chen," High Counselor Vale's voice carried the particular tone reserved for speaking to children or particularly dim maintenance drones. "This is hardly the time for human sustenance rituals." Sarah unscrewed the thermos, and the aroma of fresh coffee filled the chamber. Several alien species' sensory organs recoiled at the unfamiliar organic compound. "On the contrary, High Counselor, this is exactly the time." She poured the coffee into the thermos cap, its surface reflecting the chamber's ethereal lighting. Sometimes the best way to understand a complex problem is to break it down into simple terms. She held up the coffee. "This represents normal spacetime." Then she took a pinch of salt. "And this represents the quantum singularities your containment fields are generating." She sprinkled the salt onto the coffee's surface. The crystals floated briefly before dissolving. "Your current approach treats the anomaly like an invading force that needs to be stopped. But what if it's more like this?" Sarah began stirring the coffee with a small metal spoon. The liquid formed a vortex, and the remaining salt crystals began moving in precise patterns. The axioms leaned forward despite themselves, their analytical subroutines detecting something familiar in the fluid dynamics. "The anomaly isn't just consuming spacetime," Sarah explained, still stirring. "It's creating new patterns. Your containment fields are failing because they're trying to stop something that isn't just destruction, it's transformation." She stopped stirring, but the coffee continued to move in complex, self-sustaining patterns. "We don't need to contain it. We need to guide it." Third speaker Helix's form shifted to a frequency indicating skepticism, and humanity has developed technology capable of achieving this guidance. "Oh, we've done more than that." Sarah's smile widened as she brought up new data on her tablet. "We've already tested it." The chamber's environmental systems crackled as dozens of species processed this revelation. The holographic displays filled with images of a massive underwater facility beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. Inside a heavily shielded chamber, a miniature version of the same anomaly that was threatening the galaxy swirled in controlled patterns. "This is impossible." Kicks of the Silicon Confederation's volcanic form nearly melted their ceremonial platform. "Your species couldn't have concealed such experiments from the Council's monitoring systems." "We didn't need to conceal them," Sarah replied, casually taking a sip of her demonstration coffee. "You weren't looking for them because you assumed we couldn't possibly achieve anything like this with our primitive technology." The displays shifted to show human scientists working around the contained anomaly. Their equipment was a bizarre hybrid of salvaged alien tech and human engineering, held together in ways that made the axiom's logical processes stutter. Some components appeared to be modified Earth technology that predated their contact with the galactic community. "Is that duct tape?" an axiom observer asked, their tone suggesting existential horror. "Sometimes the old solutions are the best solutions," Sarah replied with a shrug. We've been studying these phenomena since before we knew about the galactic community. We found our first micro-anomaly in a Walmart parking lot in Wisconsin. The only reason we detected it was because it was interfering with the cart return robot. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments again, but they were cut short by a priority alert. The holographic display shifted to show the Proxima Centauri system being consumed by the expanding anomaly. The Axiom's predictions had been wrong. It was moving faster than they'd calculated. We don't have time for debates about protocol or proper technological development. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. Earth has a solution that works. We can demonstrate it right now. This is madness, High Counselor Vale declared. You're suggesting we trust the fate of the galaxy to a species that still uses internal combustion engines on some of their vehicles. No, Sarah corrected, standing tall despite being physically dwarfed by most other representatives. I'm suggesting you trust a species that looks at the impossible and sees opportunity. A species that turned your discarded technology into something new because we didn't know it couldn't be done that way. A species that found an anomaly in a parking lot and thought, hey, let's see what happens if we poke it instead of running away. She gestured to the display showing the Proxima Centauri system's destruction. Your way isn't working. The anomaly has already consumed 3 systems while we've been talking. You can either keep trying to contain it with methods that are proven to fail, or you can try our crazy human solution. Your choice. The council chamber fell into silence, broken only by the soft hum of environmental systems and the gentle clink of Sarah's spoon against her coffee cup as she took another sip. The axioms communed in frequencies too precise for other species to detect, running probability calculations and risk assessments. Finally, High Counselor Vale spoke. Humanity's proposal will be considered, but know that if your solution fails, if your reckless experiments make things worse, Earth will bear the full responsibility. Sarah's smile never wavered. Of course. And when it works, we'll bear that responsibility too. Now, would anyone like some coffee? We have a lot of work to do, and humans find it helps with the creative process. The look of horror on the Axiom's crystalline faces almost made the whole apocalyptic situation worth it. The human fleet arrived at the crisis zone in a way that perfectly exemplified their species, messily, loudly, and with a peculiar kind of organized chaos that made the Axiom observers' crystalline forms vibrate with distress. Their ships looked more like deep-sea submarines than proper space vessels, with hulls bearing the scars of actual physical impacts and repairs that had been made with more practicality than aesthetics in mind. What in the name of pure logic is that? Third Speaker Helix demanded, pointing to a particularly distinctive vessel that appeared to have part of its hull patched with something that was definitely not standard space-worthy material. That's the HSS Jugad, Sarah explained, checking her tablet. The crew had to repair damage from a micro-anomaly encounter last month. They used a composite material they developed by combining salvaged Axiom quantum steel with, I believe the report says, stuff we found in engineering's junk drawer. The Axiom observation team's horror only grew as they began receiving detailed scans of the human vessels. Each ship was powered by an impossible hybrid of technologies, salvaged alien tech combined with human engineering in ways that broke at least half of the known laws of physics. Power systems that should have torn themselves apart were instead operating at efficiencies that exceeded pure alien technology. This cannot work, one Axiom scientist declared, their form shifting through stress patterns. The quantum harmonics are completely misaligned. The power matrices are configured in ways that defy basic energy principles. That ship is using a modified food synthesizer as part of its main drive system. Yeah, turns out those things are really good at manipulating matter at a quantum level. Sarah replied. Who knew? Well, besides Junior Lieutenant Rodriguez, who got the idea while trying to make the synthesizer produce something closer to his abuelas tamales. The observation deck fell into chaos as the human ships began their work. Each vessel approached the anomaly differently, their crews working with a kind of controlled mayhem that defied standard operating procedures. Engineers made repairs by seemingly hitting things with wrenches until they worked. Pilots navigated paths that the Axiom's most advanced AI systems insisted were impossible. Scientists proposed solutions that sounded more like poetry than physics. The quantum disruption field is giving me that tickly feeling in my teeth again, one human engineer reported over the comm system. You know, like that time we accidentally created a temporary parallel universe in the break room. Try reversing the polarity, another voice suggested. Works on my dad's old TV. This is madness, High Counselor Vale declared as they watched a human ship perform a maneuver that their calculations insisted should have torn it apart. They're treating fundamental forces of reality like they're alive, Sarah finished. Because to us they are. We don't see physics as a set of immutable laws. We see it as a conversation. Sometimes you have to improvise, like jazz musicians playing off each other. The Axiom's confusion only deepened when they accessed the humans' mission logs. Rather than precise scientific notation, they found entries filled with metaphors, cultural references, and what appeared to be song lyrics. One captain had described an anomaly's behavior as, like that time my cat knocked over all the dominoes before we could finish setting them up. How can you possibly maintain operational cohesion with such imprecise communication? Third speaker Helix demanded. As if in answer, alarms blared across the observation deck. One of the human ships had detected a change in the anomaly's behavior. Instead of following standard reporting procedures, the crew immediately broadcast their findings using a mix of technical jargon and colorful metaphors. The other ships, rather than waiting for official analysis, began adapting their approaches in real time. The numbers don't make sense, an Axiom analyst reported, their form practically strobing with distress. They're achieving results that our models say are impossible. That's humanity's secret, Sarah said, watching the organized chaos with evident pride. We don't wait for things to make sense. We try things that shouldn't work, and when they do work, we figure out why later. Sometimes the best discoveries come from not knowing something's impossible. The observation deck fell silent as they watched the human fleet work. Each ship moved like part of a dance, responding to the anomaly's shifts with an intuition that no amount of pure logic could match. When one vessel discovered a more effective approach, the others didn't wait for peer review. They immediately adapted and improved upon it. Your species, High Counselor Vale said slowly, is terrifying. Sarah grinned. Thank you. We try our best. Oh, you might want to adjust your harmonic frequencies. Looks like Lieutenant Rodriguez is about to test his new theory about using modified tamal recipes to influence quantum states. The resulting light show was spectacular, even if it did temporarily give several Axiom observers the equivalent of a migraine. But it worked, and in the end, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The human fleet's approach to the anomaly defied every established protocol in the Galactic Council's extensive history. Instead of maintaining safe distances and following precise calculations, their ships dove and weaved through the anomaly's tendrils like surfers riding waves of destruction. Hess Daredevil, you're approaching critical proximity to Anomaly Strand Beta 7, an Axiom controller announced, their crystalline form vibrating with alarm frequencies. Roger that, Captain Maya Rodriguez replied, her voice carrying an inexplicable tone of amusement. We can see it. Looks kind of like a cosmic jellyfish having a seizure. That is not a scientific description. No, but it helps us visualize how it moves. Jenkins, adjust our approach vector like we're dodging one of those Australian box jellies. The Daredevil executed a maneuver that caused several Axiom observers to experience emergency shutdowns. The ship rolled between two tendrils of the anomaly, its modified shields flickering with patterns that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. Across the crisis zone, other human ships displayed equally reckless behavior. The HSS Prometheus was testing different frequencies against the anomaly surface, its crew describing the results in terms of musical notes. The HSS Curiosity had somehow turned its entire sensor array into what they called a cosmic tuning fork, using vibrations to map the anomaly structure. "They're going to get themselves killed," third speaker Helix declared, watching as the HSS Adventure deliberately flew into what their calculations indicated was certain death. Instead, the ship emerged from the other side, trailing data readings that made no sense but somehow worked. "Current survival rate is 100%, Sarah Chen pointed out from her station, where she was coordinating the fleet's efforts. "Sometimes the safest place in a storm is right in the middle of it, where you can feel which way the wind is blowing." The Axiom's prediction algorithms were failing spectacularly. Every time they calculated that a human ship was about to be destroyed, the vessel would perform some impossible maneuver or apply some illogical solution that worked despite all rational analysis saying it shouldn't. "Captain Rodriguez," Sarah called over the comm, "what are you seeing in Sector 7? It's got a rhythm to it." Maya replied, her ship dancing through spaces too complex for AI to calculate. "Like a heartbeat, but in 4 dimensions. Martinez, play that bass line you were working on in the rec room." Heavy music suddenly filled the command channel, causing several Axiom observers to recoil. But as the bass notes pulsed through the ship's modified shields, the nearby anomaly tendrils began moving in synchronization. "Are they using music to communicate with a space-time anomaly?" an Axiom scientist asked, their tones suggesting they were questioning their entire understanding of reality. "The anomaly responds to patterns," Sarah explained, watching as other ships began incorporating harmonics into their approach. "Music is just math that moves the soul. And maybe that's what we're dealing with here, not just a physical phenomenon, but something that responds to the language of existence itself." The observation deck erupted in chaos as the HSS Curiosity's crew began broadcasting what they called cosmic jazz, an improvised combination of shield frequencies, quantum harmonics, and actual musical instruments. The anomaly's tendrils moved in response, creating patterns that the Axiom's most advanced computers couldn't predict but human musicians could feel intuitively. "This is impossible," High Counselor Vale declared for what felt like the 100th time that day. "You cannot pilot a starship by feeling the music of the cosmos." "Watch us," Sarah replied with a grin. "Jenkins, show them that maneuver you developed based on your daughter's ballet recital." The HSS Daredevil spun through a series of movements that looked more like a dance than space navigation. But with each motion, the anomaly responded, its tendrils shifting and flowing in patterns that began to make a terrible, beautiful kind of sense. "We're not fighting it," Maya explained as her ship led what could only be described as a cosmic waltz. "We're dancing with it. The universe isn't just math and physics. It's art and music and poetry in motion. You just have to learn to feel the rhythm." The Axioms watched in stunned silence as the human fleet turned their mission into a performance, each ship moving in harmony with the others and with the anomaly itself. Their primitive technology, enhanced by their inexplicable intuition, was achieving what billions of credits worth of advanced equipment could not. "I believe," third speaker Helix said slowly, their crystalline form shifting through colors they didn't know they could produce, "that we may need to reconsider our definition of advanced." In the command channel, someone had started playing classical Earth music, Mozart mixed with quantum harmonics and the sound of space-time being gently persuaded to behave differently. The anomaly danced, and humanity danced with it, showing the galaxy that sometimes the most sophisticated solution was simply to feel the music of the universe and move in harmony with its rhythm. The breakthrough came during what the humans called a lunch break, another concept that baffled the Axioms. In the midst of trying to save the galaxy, the crews had insisted on taking time to eat together, share stories, and even cook actual food instead of using standard nutrient dispensers. "The anomaly's like a good soup," Maria Valdez, the HSS Daredevil's chef, explained as she stirred a pot of something that filled the ship's mess hall with aromatic molecules. "You can't just follow a recipe and expect it to be perfect. You have to feel it, taste it, adjust as you go." The Axiom observer present for this conversation might have dismissed it as irrelevant chatter, except they had been tasked with understanding how humans were achieving their impossible results. So they watched as Maria added spices without measuring, adjusted heat based on the sound of the bubbling, and somehow knew exactly when to stir just by looking at the way the surface moved. But how do you achieve consistency without precise measurements? The observer asked, their crystalline form shifting in confusion. You don't, Maria replied, tasting the soup and adding a pinch of something green. That's the secret. Every batch is different because conditions are always different. The ingredients are never exactly the same. The air pressure changes. Even my mood affects how I cook. The art is in adapting to those changes. The observer was about to explain the inefficiency of this approach when Captain Rodriguez entered the mess hall, took one look at the soup, and said, "That's it. That's what we've been missing." Within minutes, the mess hall had been converted into an impromptu strategy room. The soup pot sat in the center of the table, its surface showing similar patterns to the anomaly's movement on the main viewers. "We've been trying to control it with pure mathematics," Maya explained, watching the soup's surface tension create complex patterns. "But look at how Maria cooks. She's not fighting the chaos of different ingredients and conditions. She's working with it, letting it guide her choices while still maintaining overall direction." The observer watched in growing amazement as the human crew began drawing parallels between cooking and cosmic phenomena. They used terms like reducing the heat to describe adjusting shield frequencies and adding seasoning to explain fine-tuning their quantum harmonics. "The anomaly isn't just random chaos," Sarah Chen explained over the comm as the new approach was shared with the fleet. "It's more like a living recipe, constantly adjusting itself based on the conditions around it. We don't need to control it. We need to cook with it." The Axiom's initial reaction to this metaphorical approach was predictable skepticism. But as they watched the human ships implement these cooking techniques, they couldn't deny the results. Ships began adjusting their approaches based on intuitive readings of the anomaly's flavor, treating space-time like ingredients that could be gently guided rather than forced into submission. Hess Prometheus reporting a spicy reaction in Sector 4, came a call over the comm, reducing power to let it simmer down. Hess's curiosity here. We're getting a nice reduction effect by alternating our shield frequencies like folding ingredients. The Axiom scientists were simultaneously horrified and fascinated as their carefully constructed models were replaced by what humans called cooking by feel. But the data was undeniable. The anomaly was responding to this treatment, its wild expansions becoming more controlled, more digestible. "Your species," the observer said to Maria as they watched the soup, and the anomaly display surprisingly similar behavior patterns, appears to function on principles that directly contradict established logical frameworks. Maria laughed, stirring both her soup and, metaphorically, the cosmos. "Logic is just one ingredient in the recipe of understanding. Sometimes you need a pinch of intuition, a dash of creativity, and a whole lot of being willing to taste test your mistakes." Across the fleet, humans began approaching the anomaly like master chefs approaching a complex dish. They adjusted their techniques based on taste, developed new recipes for dealing with different manifestations, and shared their discoveries through a combination of scientific data and cooking metaphors that somehow made perfect sense to them. "The universe," Sarah Chen explained to the increasingly bewildered Galactic Council, "is the ultimate kitchen. Everything we know about cooking, about art, about music, they're all just different ways of understanding how reality flows and changes. We're not trying to impose order on chaos. We're learning to be good sous chefs to the cosmic head chef." The Axioms began to understand that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't their technology or even their problem-solving ability. It was their capacity to find patterns in chaos, to treat the illogical as an opportunity rather than a flaw, and to approach the universe not as something to be controlled, but as something to be collaborated with. As Maria's soup was shared among the crew, its complex flavors somehow perfectly matching the complexity of their mission, The observer realized that perhaps their species' pursuit of perfect logic had led them away from a fundamental truth. The universe wasn't an equation to be solved, but a recipe to be understood, one unexpected ingredient at a time. The crisis point came 18 hours into the operation, when the HS Daredevil's primary quantum resonator began to fail. The device was crucial to their recipe for taming the anomaly, and without it, the carefully orchestrated dance they'd established would begin to fall apart. Engineering reports complete failure in 6 minutes, Lieutenant Jenkins announced, his hands flying over the controls. We can't maintain the harmonic pattern without it. The Axiom observation team immediately began calculating evacuation vectors and survival probabilities. Their crystalline forms hummed with the pure logic of accepting an inevitable defeat. But they hadn't counted on the human response to imminent disaster. "Hey, Chief," Captain Rodriguez called to her engineering officer. "Remember that crazy idea you had about manually adjusting the resonator's frequency by physically manipulating the quantum core?" Chief Engineer Sandra O'Malley's face appeared on the main screen, her expression somewhere between a grin and a grimace. "The one I said would be suicide, because it would require someone to literally hand-tune a device that's channeling enough energy to power a small sun. That crazy idea. That's the one. Give me 2 minutes to grab my lucky wrench." The Axiom observers exploded in a cascade of horrified frequencies. This is madness. The energy readings alone would cook a person faster than Maria's 5-alarm chili. O'Malley finished, already strapping on what appeared to be a heavily modified maintenance suit. "But if someone doesn't do this, we lose the whole pattern, and then the anomaly goes back to eating stars for breakfast." The observation deck fell silent as they watched the humans prepare for what they clearly knew was a one-way mission. But it wasn't the sacrifice that shocked the Axioms. It was how they faced it. O'Malley's engineering team helped her suit up while trading jokes about who would feed her cat. Someone started playing what they called classic rock music over the ship's comm system. The chief engineer actually took time to write out her preferred recipe for quantum core maintenance, adding a note that read, "Since I won't be around to show the next poor bastard how it's done." "Ready for this?" Rodriguez asked as O'Malley approached the resonator chamber. "Born ready, Cap. Besides, how many engineers can say they literally became one with quantum mechanics?" She paused at the chamber door. "Hey, someone record this. When it works, I want it in the manual under examples of human ingenuity/insanity." The music switched to something with a heavy beat and screaming guitars. O'Malley took a deep breath, then grinned at the camera. "Hey, universe, watch this." What followed defied every safety protocol, engineering principle, and law of physics the Axioms held dear. O'Malley entered the chamber and began physically adjusting the quantum core's alignment, her movements matching the rhythm of the music. The energy readings were off the charts, but somehow she maintained precision even as her suit began to fail. "Core frequency stabilizing," Jenkins reported, his voice tight. "The pattern is holding." "You're doing it, Chief," Rodriguez called. "The whole fleet is picking up the new resonance pattern." O'Malley's voice came through with increasing static. "Told you it would work. Simple physics, just had to feel the rhythm." And she coughed. "Okay, getting a bit toasty in here, but I can see the pattern now. It's beautiful." The Axioms watched in stunned silence as the human engineer continued her work, making adjustments based on what she called the music of the spheres, even as her suit's sensors reported fatal radiation levels. She was singing along with the music, her voice growing weaker, but never losing its hint of laughter. "Pattern locked," Jenkins announced. "Chief, you did it." "Course I did," O'Malley replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Humans don't know when to quit. It's our superpower." The transmission ended, but the pattern held. The resonator, manually tuned by human hands and human intuition, maintained its frequency. Across the fleet, other ships picked up the harmony, weaving it into their dance with the anomaly. Captain Rodriguez stood at attention, tears streaming down her face even as she smiled. Log it as a successful field test of the O'Malley method of quantum resonance tuning. And somebody make sure her cat gets adopted by someone who knows how to appreciate a good engineer's pet. The Axioms had never understood human behavior less, yet paradoxically, had never been closer to grasping their essence. In the face of certain death, they didn't retreat into logic or despair. They met it with music, with jokes, with recipes left behind, and with a determination to make their sacrifice mean something. Your species, High Counselor Vale said softly, their crystalline form shifting through colors of respect, does not embrace death. You laugh in its face. No, Rodriguez corrected, wiping her eyes. We embrace life so hard that death becomes just another part of the dance. Now let's make sure the Chief's last waltz with the quantum core wasn't wasted. Jenkins, show the fleet how to incorporate her frequency pattern. Let's finish this. In the background, the music played on, a tribute to an engineer who had turned her final moments into both a scientific breakthrough and a testament to humanity's unique approach to the impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had changed in subtle but profound ways since the crisis began. The perfect crystalline architecture remained, but now there were touches of humanity scattered throughout. A coffee station in one corner, comfortable chairs mixed among the traditional pedestals, and even a small memorial to Chief Engineer O'Malley that somehow included both quantum physics equations and her favorite cookie recipe. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, but this time not as a supplicant. The junior representative from Earth had earned something unprecedented, the right to address the council as a peer. The anomaly crisis taught us all something valuable, she began, her tablet replaced by a more traditional council holographic interface, though she customized it with what she called a user-friendly interface. We learned that the universe is not just a set of rules to be followed, but a dance to be learned. And now we propose to take that dance to a new level. The holographic display filled with data from Earth's latest project. The Axiom's crystalline forms vibrated with recognition as they processed what they were seeing. You're proposing to create controlled anomalies, High Counselor Vale stated, their tone carrying both wonder and concern. To use them for transportation. We're calling it the Chaos Drive, Sarah confirmed. By creating and guiding minimal anomalies, we can essentially fold spacetime in ways that make our current FTL travel look like walking. But more importantly, we can do it safely because we've learned to work with chaos rather than against it. The chamber erupted in overlapping discussions. Some species were horrified at the idea of intentionally creating the very thing that had nearly destroyed them. Others were intrigued by the potential. The axioms themselves seemed split, their perfect consensus shattered by this very human proposal. This is how we've always evolved, Sarah continued. We take our greatest challenges and turn them into opportunities. The fire that could burn us became the heat that forged our tools. The oceans that could drown us became the paths to new horizons. And now, the chaos that threatened to destroy us will become the road to the stars. In a side chamber, a group of young axioms had gathered around a human teacher. They were attempting something unprecedented in their species' history, learning to act on intuition. Their crystalline forms shifted through irregular patterns as they tried to understand concepts like winging it and going with your gut. Don't think about the movement, the teacher advised, demonstrating a simple dance step. Feel it, let your form flow naturally. The axioms struggled, their logical processes fighting against the very concept of unplanned motion. But then, one of them managed it. A single, imperfect, beautiful movement that wasn't calculated at all. And then, even more surprisingly, they laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber, causing every being present to stop and stare. Axioms didn't laugh. They didn't express joy in such an uncontrolled way. It simply wasn't their nature, but something had changed. The universe isn't just chaos or just order, Sarah said, smiling at the sound. It's both, dancing together. Humanity didn't survive because we were the strongest or the smartest. We survived because we learned to dance between the raindrops, to find joy in uncertainty, to turn our mistakes into discoveries. She gestured to the young Axioms, who were now attempting to tell jokes, badly, but with genuine enthusiasm. This is evolution. Not just advancing our technology or perfecting our logic, but growing in ways we never expected. Learning to embrace the beautiful imperfection of existence. The council chamber's environmental systems adjusted themselves automatically as species from across the galaxy began to sense something new. Not just the potential of the chaos drive technology, but a new way of seeing the universe itself. Earth formally proposes an exchange program, Sarah announced. We'll share our chaos drive technology, and in return, we ask for the opportunity to learn from all of you, not just your advanced science, but your unique perspectives. And we offer the same, not just our technical innovations, but our art, our music, our cooking, our dancing, our humanity. High Counselor Vale's form shifted through colors never before seen in the chamber. You propose to change not just how we travel through space, but how we exist within it. Exactly, Sarah confirmed, because that's what humans do. We change things. Sometimes by careful planning, sometimes by desperate improvisation, but always with the hope that we can make things better. Not perfect, better. The chamber filled with a new sound, the young Axiom's laughter mixing with human music, the hum of advanced technology harmonizing with the simple clink of coffee cups, the sound of the galaxy learning a new dance. The universe is vast and full of wonders, Sarah concluded. But the greatest wonder of all is our ability to keep growing, keep changing, keep surprising ourselves and each other. So, who's ready to dance? And in that moment, as species from across the galaxy began to move to the rhythm of possibility, the truth became clear. Humanity's greatest gift to the universe wasn't their technology or their solutions or even their courage. It was their ability to look into the face of the impossible and see not an end, but a beginning. Not a boundary, but an invitation. Not chaos, but a dance waiting to be learned. The story of humanity's rise in the galaxy wasn't about becoming the strongest or the most advanced. It was about teaching the galaxy to laugh, to dance, to cook with love, to find beauty in imperfection, and to face the unknown not with fear, but with a smile and that uniquely human phrase that had changed everything. Hey, watch this.